Does it ever feel like your brain just doesn't operate on a straight line? You know, like while everyone else is going from A to B, you're off exploring points X, Y, and a couple that aren't even on the map yet? If that sounds familiar, you are in exactly the right place. We're about to dive into the science and really the power behind what it means to have a truly divergent mind.
This quote, wow, it just gets right to the heart of it, doesn't it? It's this huge contradiction. The very things that might get you labeled as restless or unfocused, the same traits that probably made life tricky for people like Leonardo da Vinci or Virginia Woolf, are the same ones that have quietly shaped our entire world. We're talking about a very specific way of thinking that so many of history's greatest innovators had in common.
Exactly. I mean, think about it. People like Edison and Einstein didn't just think harder. They thought sideways. Their minds didn't just follow a neat, orderly path. They leaped. They connected totally random ideas, and they played in what looked like chaos to everyone else. Edison famously tested thousands, literally thousands of materials for his light bulb. That's a masterclass in divergent exploration, right? Only then did he switch to that focused, convergent thinking to perfect the one that finally worked. And now science actually has a name for this style, and is directly tied to these huge breakthroughs.
And that, right there, that's the big question we're tackling in this whole explainer. What if that feeling of being a little out of step with everyone else isn't a sign that something's wrong with you, but a sign of a really unique cognitive strength, a different kind of wiring that's just built for a different kind of purpose?
So to really get this, we need to look at two primary ways our brains think. Over on the left, you've got convergent thinking. You can think of this like a funnel. It's all about logic, analysis, and narrowing things down to find one single correct answer. Like solving a math problem. Then, on the right, you have divergent thinking, and it's the total opposite. It's like a branching tree, starting from one point and just exploding outwards, generating tons of unique ideas. One is about finding the answer, the other is about finding the possibilities. Both are absolutely crucial, but our world, well, it tends to celebrate one and really misunderstand the other.
Okay, so let's make this a little more personal. In this next section, I just want you to listen and see if you recognize your own thinking patterns in these scientifically documented signs of a divergent mind. Does any of this sound like you? Let's start with this one. Someone asks you a pretty simple question, and instead of just one answer popping into your head, your mind lights up like a complex spider web of possibilities, different scenarios, and a bunch of follow-up questions. This isn't indecisiveness, it's just your brain's natural instinct to explore every angle, not just land on the first one.
And here it is, the formal psychological definition. It's simply the brain's ability to create multiple, unique solutions from a single prompt. And cognitive psychologists are really clear on this. This is a different way of processing information, not a broken way.
What about this one? Does this ever happen to you? Maybe you're listening to some classical music, and suddenly it clicks, and you understand a concept from evolutionary biology. Or you're looking at the architecture of a building, and it sparks an idea for a whole new business model. This is a total hallmark of a divergent mind. Yeah, there's a name for that. It's called remote associations. Research by a psychologist named Sarnoff Mednick discovered that creatively minded people are literally wired to see connections that most other people's brains just filter out to be more efficient. So you're not seeing things that aren't there. Your brain just has a much wider, more interconnected view of the world.
Oh man, we've all been there, right? You spend hours hammering away at a problem at your desk, nothing. And then, the second you step into the shower or you're just about to fall asleep, boom, the perfect solution arrives, totally out of the blue. That is not a coincidence.
What's actually happening there is your brain's default mode network is kicking in. Neuroscience shows us that this system, which lights up when we're resting or daydreaming, is deeply connected to creative insight. It's when your conscious, focused mind takes a break that your subconscious can finally get to work connecting all those dots. So, being patient and stepping away is actually part of the process. And by the way, this is also why you can feel so mentally exhausted. Your brain is often running in the background, solving problems, even when you don't realize it.
Okay, so now that we've kind of looked inward, let's look at the world around us. Because if this way of thinking is so powerful, why does it so often feel like such a struggle? Well, the answer isn't in you, it's in the world we've built. I bet this one hits home for a lot of people. You're busy exploring 10 different ways to solve a problem, but to your teacher or your boss, it just looks like you can't focus on the one path they told you to follow.
And here's why that happens. Our modern school and corporate systems, for the most part, are designed to reward convergent thinking. Think about it. Standardized tests, quarterly reports. They prioritize speed and finding that one single known correct answer. There's just no box on the form for the 5 other brilliant creative answers you came up with.
Please, just take a second and let that one sink in. If you have spent years, maybe even decades, feeling like you were the problem, it is so important to understand that you weren't. You were a divergent thinker trying to operate in a system built for convergent thinkers. The problem wasn't your brain, it was the mismatch. And just realizing that can bring such a profound sense of emotional relief.
Okay, so recognizing the pattern is the first huge step. The next step, and this is the most powerful one, is learning how to work with your brain's natural flow instead of constantly trying to fight against it.
Let's be really clear here. This is not just some quirky personality trait. In the right context, it's a legitimate superpower. In fields like art, science, entrepreneurship, basically anywhere that true innovation is required, this kind of thinking is the price of admission. These entire fields are driven by people who ask that simple, powerful question, what if?
This is so critical to understand, and it's backed by decades of research. Way back in the 1950s, a psychologist named J.P. Guilford was the first to prove that divergent thinking is a completely separate thing from what we measure with standard IQ tests. You can have a totally average IQ and be off the charts creative.
I love this thought because it just sums everything up perfectly. It's not about how much information you can cram into your brain, it's about the number of new, interesting connections and ideas you can create from that information. It's a creative engine, not just a hard drive.
And this might just be the most empowering piece of the whole puzzle. This isn't some fixed label you're stuck with for life. It's a cognitive style. And once you understand your own style, you can start building strategies and systems to lean into your strengths and manage the challenges. You get to be in the driver's seat of your own mind.
So how do you actually do that? Well, first, you recognize the patterns, like we've been talking about. Second, you reframe the so-called flaws. Restless becomes curious. Scattered becomes exploratory. Third, find environments where this is an asset, but also learn to manage in more rigid ones. That might mean learning how to communicate your big ideas to more linear thinkers. Pro tip, try starting with your conclusion, then walk them back through your creative path. And finally, work with your brain's rhythms. Get tools to capture those fleeting ideas, voice notes, apps, even a waterproof notepad for the shower. For studying or work, try mind mapping instead of boring linear notes. Maybe start your day with a 5-minute brain dump just to get all that creative restlessness out before you have to focus. It's all about building a life that fits your brain, not forcing your brain to fit into a life that doesn't.
You know, when it comes down to it, all real growth starts with self-awareness. Just giving a name to your experience, fully understanding and accepting your unique cognitive architecture, it's not just interesting. It's freeing. It lets you stop blaming yourself and start building a better way forward.
So, I'm going to leave you with this question, this challenge, really. Now that you understand that your brain is literally wired for exploration, for seeing connections no one else sees, for generating endless possibilities, what are you going to give yourself permission to create? What will you build, or solve, or imagine? Because the world really needs your kind of thinking, especially in creative leadership roles, now more than ever.